Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome all of you on behalf of Intac Hooghly chapter. We are here to hear about the olden days when the river Hooghly was the main path of conveyance in the district of Hooghly. And we all know that before the railways came, the roadways and most importantly the riverways, they were so important. And as a part of the project named Hooghly River of Cultures, the principal investigator, Dr. Ian Magedera, will be in conversation with Neline Mondal, who has created 5 excellent silk banners, giant silk banners that represent 5 riverside towns by the river Hooghly. And while doing that, she has reimagined those towns uh, as it could have been at the time when the railways were not here. So without much ado, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Ian Magedera. He teaches French at the University of Liverpool, and he heads uh, a project, UK funded project named Hooghly River of Cultures, that was working from 2018 to 2020. Then this pandemic came and we could not do any field work. I'm also a part of this project, and in fact, Intech Hooghly chapter has been set up as one of the outputs of this project. So recently we could not do many things. We could not do field works. We could not. Ian, are you presenting? Okay, fine. Yeah, we can see your presentation, Ian. So in the meanwhile, what we have done is, as a part of this project, Ian has planned this beautiful thing, and we were supposed to install these giant banners uh, in the towns that they depict. For example, the Chinchura banner in Chinchura. Ian, could you please stop presenting now? Because yeah, this is what we are going to experience now. We'll be talking about how these towns probably were when the railways were not here. So I'd like to invite Dr. Magedera, and we all know Neline Mondal is already here. She is an artist today, but apart from being an artist who has created such beautiful silk banners, she has been enthusiastic about heritage issues. She is well known for her views on the history and heritage on the riverside towns in Hooghly, and we all know about Neline Mondal, and it would be a great experience to hear them interact. Ian, Ian, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm just sharing my screen.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you ever so much, Ramanuj. Thank you for that warm welcome. Um, Welcome to everybody. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here. Thank you for taking time out of your Sunday. So, what is this going to be? This, I have the great pleasure of launching in this online format, River Time. And as Ramanuj said, River Time is a series of 5 gigantic silk banners depicting and also, I must say, reimagining the 5 settlements which are by the Hooghly. Now, I'm well aware that that some of you here won't know exactly where they are situated. So I'm going to begin my presentation, the full part of my presentation, with a little bit of a tour, a brief tour, just to get you to take you to this place. I'm currently not there at the moment. I wish I was. Neline and Ramanuj are, and several of you are in West Bengal. But we also have people joining us from London, from Denmark, from Thailand, from the United States, from the UK, from France. Obviously I haven't detailed everyone's location, but you're welcome, welcome all. And so today is meant to be quite a light discussion, um, but and we hope to instruct you, but also to entertain you at the same time. Um, but there are some serious sides to all this, and I hope that Neline and I will be able to invoke them as we go through. One of the serious sides of this, and one of the key sort of philosophical underpinnings of this is ways of seeing, to quote the title of that very influential John Berger documentary from the 1970s. So ways of seeing. Obviously, we're talking about an art form which is in two dimensions, but I want to challenge you and to challenge you to think about how these banners cross and may cross the boundary between the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional. Okay, because within them we are invoking a sense of history and a very specific period of history, which we are calling river time, and it's also an attitude to time as well. Another thing, a serious issue that I want to talk about is the legitimacy of discourse in heritage. I think that's very, very important. And by that, I mean that there is effectively a residual elitism within heritage discourse, particularly in India. And I'd like to challenge that. One of the things that we have to challenge is the fact that just as I'm speaking to you now in English, there is a preponderance of the English language within heritage discourse in India. And so, as Ramanuj has let me know, anyone who interacts with their smartphone, with their device in Bengali, will be able to post comments and questions in that language into the chat. That's really, really important. So Neline is obviously a fluent Bengali speaker. The two moderators who will be active, Antara Mukherjee, and Purba Chatterjee, are also fluent. They share languages, French, English, and of course Bengali. So we want a very diverse discussion. Now, let me just give you a bit of an overview of the structure of today's chunk, let's say, of river time. I've divided today's river time into four different sections. Okay, so the first section is when I'm going to outline very, very briefly how river time, how Neline's artwork fits into the Hooghly River of Cultures and that project's legacy. That project ran from 2018 to 2020, and I'm going to tell you how it fits in there. And then immediately afterwards, we're going to move into a question and answer session between Neline and myself. So I've prepared a series of questions, which Neline has had a little glance at as well. And these are going to, I hope, take some of the themes within the project, but also some of the ideas about effectively about the making of, which I know that many people are really, really interested in. How did it come? How did River Time come to be? how did these series of banners come to be? And there's, for those particular people who are interested in the practical craft technique of batik, and also of this particular region, we're looking forward to enlighten and interest you there. There are a whole series of wonderful anecdotes which involve Neline boiling hot wax as well, me bringing the dyes from Rossendale in Lancashire in the UK in my own suitcase through New Delhi and Kolkata airports, which is quite an anecdote in itself, into Neline's front yard. So there are lots of funny and warm anecdotes. This project has been 5 years in the making. So it's an absolute delight for us to share with you this online launch today. The third section in our chunk of River Time is about giving you the chance to ask questions via the chat. These questions will be bundled and then asked to the artist. And if there are any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those. And then also, finally, the fourth section is just a small coda where the river reaches the sea effectively, and Ramanuj will just briefly round up on behalf of INTAC Hooghly. For those of you who don't know the abbreviation, INTAC is the Indian National Trust for Arts and Cultural Heritage. And one of the legacies of the Hooghly River of Cultures project, which was a project principally funded by the UK's Arts and Humanities Research Council, one of the legacies of that project was the creation of a local Hooghly chapter of INTAC, which is a national organization that was founded in the mid 80s in India. And so I'm very, very proud to be an overseas lifetime a member of INTAC Hooghly with several other people, and it's an absolute delight, really, to be able to talk to you today. So, without further ado, let's begin the section where I take those who are not familiar with the Hooghly, which is the river, obviously in river time. And I'd like to join me with a brief sort of scene setting. And forgive the sort of jugad nature of this. This was done on a mobile phone, but I just want to show you a little animation with a pin in it, and the pin marks Chandanagar, the very place from which Neline and Ramanuj and many others are speaking to you today. If you think about the line of the 5 settlements moving towards the coast, Chandanagar is right in the middle. So it's the third of the 5th. So if one was looking downstream, okay, it would be in this order: Bandel, Chinsara, that we've called Kuchura on the introductory materials, Chandanagar, Serampur, and Barakpur. Now, obviously, it's a source of regret that we can't actually, put you in front of the banners today. But as I'm speaking, it will be absolutely wonderful if you could create your own sort of appreciation of the artistic value of these banners by going to the site, which was actually highlighted as part of the banner preview in the invitation that you received. And that's frenchbooksonindia.com/photo stories. And please have a look at the banners, because as I'm speaking, it might be a good idea for you to actually luxuriate in the closest we can get to an augmented reality experience of these particular banners. And I hope you will take up the invitation, which is there for all of you. We'll hope to be bringing the banners to various places, but certainly for you to consider visiting West Bengal and visiting these remarkable cities by the Hooghly, and maybe even seeing the banners yourself. So I'm going to take you in here in a small animation to the actual to the place where we are going to start our story. Okay, so here we are as we move in to West Bengal, the north east corner. And at the bottom right, you can see the start of the Sundarbans. And we're moving in. You can see we're looking at the area immediately upriver from Kolkata. Okay. And here we have the Sundarbans, and there is the mouth of the of the Hooghly. So what I've shown you so far, that little animation, took us to here, effectively. Okay, now let me just make this a little bit more accessible for you. Okay, so if you imagine Kolkata is here, all right, and this is the sweep of the Hooghly. There's a town which is called a Hooghly here, but we are also calling that place Chinsura Hooghly. Okay, so Bandel, Chinsura, Chandanagar, Serampur is about here, and Barakpur is here. So you can see where we're talking about. And if I followed this river up, eventually I would get to Varanasi, and eventually on to the to the Himalayas, where the river is sort of is generated. Okay, so let me take you on to understanding, first of all, the names. Obviously, when we're talking about Hooghly, that is an imposed sort of geographical name. It's very, very important to understand that in spiritual terms and in emotional terms, what the river we are talking about here is the Bhagirathi Hooghly, but in spiritual terms, we're talking about the Ganga or the Ganges, and that's really, really important for us to understand. Okay, and in historical terms, if we're looking back to that period in which river time is focused, that period from 1396 on to approximately 1854. Please, I hope the Indian citizens here will forgive me putting these flags on their land, but this is this remarkable sort of a colonial European legacy of this particular place, which is absolutely unique in the world. Okay, so Bandel, originally a Portuguese settlement, Chinsura, originally a Dutch settlement. Well, I say originally, during the colonial period. Chandanagar, a French settlement, Serampur, a Danish settlement, Barakpur, a British military cantonment, and then Kolkata. Okay, so in looking at this area, I'd like to fall back on words uttered in 2015 by the UK historian of heritage, Philip Davies, who said that the Hooghly is not just an Indian river, but belongs to the world. Okay, with that, okay, one has to have a little bit of a critical attitude to that. That's a British historian saying that. I don't think he's saying it in a colonial sense, but he wants to stress the global significance of this place. It's unique within India and also in the world to have that sort of scale, okay, of about 34 kilometers along the river, with so many sort of colonial imprints, traces, etc. But one mustn't forget that the Ganga, the Hooghly, is actually, in today's India, national waterway number 1. Okay, so there's a whole other inscription of that particular waterway. Now, when I was thinking about some photos to choose for you, to show you, I can see from my photo choice that I'm getting very, very nostalgic. I've been away from the Hooghly for too long. All my photos were very misty photos of this sort of wonderful space, which is, cut away from the day. I mean, with these photos, it's almost a twilight dawn zone. My photographs were also misty, dewy-eyed. These photographs were taken both by Neline Mondal herself and also by a very wonderful collaborator with the project, Potit Paban Halder, who is an autodidact photographer who took some of these photographs. These are actually very, very wonderful photographs. Okay, and these give you some idea of my mood and my longing to be back beside the Hooghly myself. But coming back to the questions that I was talking to you about the representation of space, there is something that I really want to convey to you, and that is that um, the Hooghly at this particular point is um, outside Chandanagar, because the Hooghly actually has a curve, has a very important bend to it. You can see there's an expansion, almost an exponential expansion of perspective. It literally takes your breath away when you come to the riverbank and look out onto the river. So this is something really, really important. It's, you break into space, light, and air. You can see far. You can breathe more easily when you come to the to the Hooghly. Now, come to the Hooghly's bank. Now, what I want to stress to you is that when we're talking about these five cities, okay, and I want to make a comparison here between these five cities and or let's say towns and Kolkata itself now, okay. These five cities are much, much smaller than Kolkata. Okay, so if you imagine that you're standing on the bank, they give you a little bit when you look out into that space. Can you see you get a similar space, a similar impression of space as you would see in the banners themselves? Okay, let's say not exactly in terms of the representation of buildings, but in this division of land, water, and land. Okay, so it's a tripartite division that we will come back to again and again. There's something very, very particular about the way that the experience of the river is much, much more direct and accessible to far more people in the five towns than in Kolkata. And this is quite simply because the urban morphology of these towns, the depth of the town, say, for example, if we're standing here at the back, the depth of town, of constricted urban space behind us here in the five towns is much, much more reduced than in Kolkata. So this yields a higher quality of life. One is closer to the river, closer to its salubrious effects on health, mental well-being, etc. Whereas I would say that Kolkatans are submerged deeper in buildings and in roads. And I think what I'd like to do is to return to this switching between these two dimensions in the banners and the three dimensions of what we see in the city and our experience of the riverbank. Okay, so what I want to do for you now is really awaken a sense of what the project was trying to do, and the project was very aware that the experience of the people who live in Hooghly of the river was mainly a crossing. Just like in this image here, it was very much one bank to another. Okay, and what we wanted to recreate for those within the wider community as part of a discourse about heritage was more than this crossing experience of a river. It was the experience of the lateral long flow of the river. Okay, which was an experience that was really only had by traders and by colonial adventurers, travelers, etc., from Europe. Okay, the depictions and representations in fine arts and in lithographs, etc., in maps from the colonial period are very much elongated, but that's been lost in Hooghly at the present. And there are all these interesting initiatives at the moment by the West Bengal government to try and reanimate a perspective on the river that's been lost. But that's something that we really led the way in doing. And this lovely image is taken from a river symposium, which was part of the project, which traveled from Chandanagar down to Srirampur along the river. And Helle Jørgensen, who you can see here, is our collaborator, an anthropologist from Denmark, a heritage specialist, and she was talking to heritage activists and to other members of the project about the idea of heritage as they went down the river. Okay. Now, these initiatives, this was an academic initiative, but these sort of initiatives they really need to be to be fostered. They're very, very important. So here is a little bit of a summary of of the project. And what we identified within the project was a need for a portable display medium illustrating the diversity of these settlements, okay, and at the same time as showcasing local arts and crafts, local expertise, Neline's expertise, but using authentic materials from the region. So put simply, we were using both heritage practices, batik, and heritage materials, Murshidabad silk, to disseminate awareness about heritage in Hooghly as a multilingual space. And we were using an art form which was communicating primarily through visual means. So it didn't have Neline's River Time doesn't have within it an overbearing use of the written or spoken word. We tried, and Neline tries to and succeeds to develop her own visual artistic language for communicating built heritage and cultural heritage. And I think in this visual response to try and to represent heritage, we are again addressing this fundamental problem and shortcoming with heritage in India. And I'm very conscious of this, speaking to you in English, that heritage occurs via English, the English sort of medium. So, the strength of this project is always the volunteers that have been with us all of these for all of these years. Many of these people have joined us within Intac Hooghly. The project covered film, Shomoita, The Healer is a film about Jagotri Puja. Was entered into the AHRC's research in film competition in 2020. Is yet to go on general release. We're looking forward to doing that. We had heritage days, sensitizing people to heritage. We took the idea that we were going to look at the river, but also at domestic heritage. So the remarkable architectural hybridity of the grand houses of Hooghly. So that's inside inside Shedbari, where we had our Hooghly Heritage Day. We also wanted to obviously train volunteers within the project to do trickle down knowledge exchange to make sure that the younger generation was advised of the correct facts about heritage. There is a lot of sort of incorrect information out there. So there are lots of academics within our group. We were able to provide to write under the editorship of Antara Mukherjee a book called Chandanagar Mon Amour, Chandanagar Mon Amour, and that is a source book of factually, academically, let's say, peer-reviewed material and facts on the region. Obviously, Neline's artwork is very, very important, but I want to tell you here that the project has a wonderful depth to it. There are other expressions, artistic expressions. This is one by Ankita Chakraborty, an absolutely wonderful graphic. You can see here Barakpur, Sarampur, Chandanagar, Chinsara, and Bandel looked at from another perspective, a lateral perspective. Absolutely wonderful. And here is a bit of detail. You can see Hooghly here represented. We have the church at Bandel. We have Tagore's Padma boat. We have Nanda Dulal temple. We have the Armenian church in Chinsara, and we also have the King Edward clock in Chinsara as well. Forgive me if I've got anything wrong here. I no doubt will be stand corrected. Because one of the things, for example, the Intact do, they do a heritage quiz for schools, and so the way that correct knowledge is being disseminated and taken pride in is absolutely wonderful. So just to move on, there was the project overachieved in the sense that we were able to get extra funding to bring to India the Hooghly Otitio Kendro, which is the Hooghly Heritage Hub, which is a 30 square meter exhibition space, which will be rolling, trundling around Hooghly in the near future. And you can see Ankita's graphics here. This takes me to Neline. Neline's vision. Neline's vision is a rare and original vision. And I would say it's slightly dangerous as well. If you look at Neline and look for Neline when you're looking around a heritage site, suddenly she will appear high on a roof, sort of perched precariously. Neline is one for climbing ladders at the slightest sort of drop of a hat. She will climb a ladder. For example, we went to actually go to a Rajbari, Itachuna Rajbari, and this is Neline's particular view of it, taken from the roof. I mean, her artistic vision involves original perspectives, ladders, taking a lot of personal risk as a sort of I was responsible, obviously, for this project via the AHRC, and it was a rather a challenging moment at certain moments to rein Neline in or constantly remind her to take necessary sort of precautions when boiling wax, when climbing on ladders, etc. Neline is a health and safety nightmare, but therefore she is an absolutely wonderful artist. A very, very brief biographical note about Neline. Although Neline was born in Belgium, her formative years were spent in the Dutch Netherlands, town of Wassenaar, as a pupil of the Rijnlands Lyceum. Okay, though she was taught classical guitar, Neline taught herself the fine arts of the former Dutch colony of Indonesia, such as weaving, batik, wood sculpting, and shadow puppetry. So her style, she's a polyvalent, a multi-talented artist working in many different media. But she went on to study biology and biochemistry at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris after passing the competitive examination. She came to India in the 1980s and she learned to play the esraj, a sitar-like stringed instrument, and made sculptures in clay. Neline created in 2016 a 32-foot long silk scroll on the heritage of Chandanagar as part of the UK-India Silk River project. So Neline's was one of the 10 scrolls taken from 10 cities in the region that were exhibited in Trafalgar Square in London and on the river in London as part of the Totally Thames Festival and in the Victoria Memorial Hall in Kolkata. The Silk River project, which ran from 2016 to 2018, explored the riverine relationships between London by the Thames and Kolkata by the Hooghly through the artistic exchanges between the UK and India, and commemorated the 70th anniversary of Indian independence and continuing cultural connections between the two countries. So what do they depict? The scrolls depict the high points of cultural history in each of the 5 cities: Bandel, Chinsara, Chandanagar, Serampur, Barakpur. What time do they depict and why? So what time is river time? A deliberate choice was made by Neline to focus on the period between the construction of the Serampore Roth in 1396 and the coming of the railways in 1854. The Eastern Bengal Railway was established in 1857, and this is why Mangal Pandey features as well. So that period is a period before the major European influence on the Hooghly region became felt, i.e. before the overwhelming British influence. Secondly, it was a period where some of the minor non-British colonizers, such as the Netherlands until 1825, Denmark until 1845, France, uninterrupted from 1815 to 1950, the 1950s, still had a foothold in the region. So it was a more diverse time, colonially speaking, than having an only British colonizer. And third, the period extends to right before the railways increased the pace of life, increased the speed of extractive colonialism. So as Ramanuj said, the focus here is on the river and on roads. And I'd just like to give you a little bit of an insight. Neline will be talking about more about this during the question and answer section. But we wanted to use river time to slow down things before the railways came. And this gives you a little bit of an insight about the creative process. We wanted to slow things down and for people to be able to visualize themselves in a time before the everyday rattle, tooting, and shaking of the fast movement of the trains. That's the invitation to river time. And it's my great pleasure to move into the question and answer section of today's. I just want to leave today's launch. I just want to leave you with a tiny, a very, very short video of Neline separating the actual silk banner from the waxed silk banner in its raw state after its first waxing. So here I am absolutely, as the English phrase goes, having kittens at this point. I think the silk is going to tear, but Neline is absolutely mistress of her art, and just takes us through it, and she is just supreme here. The way she sort of separates it. There we are. Excellent. Goods. I'm going to stop sharing now and invite Neline to come and join us. Neline, if you've got your microphone on, I believe, can you just say hello, and we can then move into the to the question and answer session. Neline, are you there? I think you have your. I can't hear you at the moment.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, that's excellent. So Neline, I'm going to move to our first question. Okay. It's simply a question about how we got into these, from those early sketches, how we got to the final, how you got to the final product. Okay, so why batik? Why batik on silk? And have you adapted those early techniques that you, the sort of Indonesian techniques, the techniques from Southeast Asia, have you adapted those to the West Bengal context? And have you adapted those to this particular subject matter?
Yes, actually, batik, because it's of course a cultural heritage and it's bring down heritage material. That's for sure. And it's true that I have completely adapted it to my own way. And also one thing is there that after all, silk represents a period of wealth. The Murshidabad silk and some other varieties of silk are quite famous. So they represent, of course, a period of wealth in Bengal. And the period we are describing, the historical phase of the district we are describing, is a period of great wealth. So it was very befitting to use a material which precisely itself physically, materially, represents the wealth of that period. It just fits in. And about the batik, though it's of course originated from Indonesia, and the biggest experts are Indonesians, I studied quite a lot the different techniques because I was by nature very interested in it. So especially Javans, in Java, they have the best technique. But it's true that none of the way I do it matches in any way any region of Indonesia. Actually, what happens with artists, we never copy. We always end up doing our own thing, and including about the techniques. I've used the craziest things, sometimes even toothbrushes and thread and knives and everything to again make grooves inside batik. Because if you only use a brush, you won't get everywhere fine lining. And of course, I've used several stages where there is first a certain pattern and design made with batik, and then we used a bit lighter colors. Then again, over that, I did again finer batik, and I again used deeper colors. And it's true that every time I invent it in a very different way. Actually, what I do often is exactly the opposite of the batik technique. Because, for example, eyes, the batik artists, they make the outlines of eyes with wax. But what happens when you actually put the colors, you get the opposite of an eye. Where you should have, for example, the pupil, you get white. So I did exactly the opposite. And even sometimes I use photography for that. So actually I made a photography of the subject I wanted. And then by edit, which is very possible, anyone can do that in Photoscape, by edit, I actually changed it. Like the black became white, and first I put it in black and white in color, and then I simply made the negatives out of it. So I visualized for myself, I took the conception of where I shall put the wax in such a way that precisely where is the white, there I shall put the wax. And so this is how, especially at least for the eyes and all that, and for animals, it is true that this batik is very much more realistic and looking more like a painting with white outlines than batik. Because precisely that's how I did it, using the negative technique. So these modern methods we can use, like Photoscape and all that, has been extremely useful for me. And every artist will do that. We shall automatically, even the sculpting and in all matters of art, I've always done it my own way. So
that's absolutely fascinating. So fascinating. Could you tell us a little bit more about the selection process for the inclusion of the various buildings and cultural elements? Obviously, it's a very, very long process, and I gave the audience a little bit of a sense of the sort of the stages. I wonder whether you could just take us through that a little bit.
And I once again, in front of absolutely everyone, want to stress on the very factor that this has been done also with the backup of iron, because iron might be a professor of French, but there's a hidden artist inside iron, and I'm not shy to say that in front of everyone. He has a fantastic artistic conception. So every time, whenever he put an input of his own, I completely listen to that. So let me do that. Of course, I have been, yes, working heritage for 30 years. So then you end up being one kind of, personal encyclopedia, which is the same case for everyone who has worked many years in heritage. So you end up with an enormous quantity of subjects, which anyway you will not find on Google, because don't depend on Google for that. So among your many, many subjects, you have to select somewhere. Now, when you want to select, first of all, you maintain one thing. You want to keep a storyline. This is not a work about, putting a massive quantity of elements and buildings. You want to tell a story. On top of that, you can't put a massive quantity of buildings and subjects because I wanted to give a huge importance to the river, the blue river, the peace, the gigantic river. So, and surrounding it is relative peace. That time it was a lot of jungle. It was very safe to put a lot of greenery. So it's not possible also for that reason to go and put a lot of buildings. So we were thinking together, Ian and I, we came to the conclusion, which Ian already said, that I should concentrate on before the railways. First of all, of course, it was the period of glory before the literally urbanization of the Hooghly, and it's becoming more like a suburb due to the railways. And second thing, it's the peace of that time. So especially Chananaga, by the way, which had a huge quantity of subjects which are usually interested and often not at all known by the people of the town. It had a massive quantity of subjects which actually were just in the 60s and 70s, I mean 1860s and 1870s. So I was very strict on myself. Anything which is beyond 1843, no matter how important, it goes off. It goes off. It can be massively important subjects like the St. Joseph Convent or name it. But when you set a rule, you keep the rule. So massively important subjects like on the Strand and St. Joseph Convent and others, they went off. Plain. And so you find yourself also with one thing in batik is that after all, it's a medium which uses wax. So you want to have some space for your subjects. Initially, the banners were supposed to be like 8 feet into 2.5. I, on my own volition, expanded and expanded. I even delayed months buying the silk through my partner, Osim, by the way. I was not alone in that. Till we literally at last got a silk which was 3.5 feet wide. I was very strict on that. I don't go for something 3 feet. And officially it's like 10 feet, but often they are 11 feet in length. Like, you know, to just have as much space as possible because you are dealing with wax. So that is also another reason that you don't want to have too many buildings and too many subjects because you want also the peoples. You want their rituals, you want the religious side, which was hugely important in those times. You want the trade, you want the ox carts, you want the greenery, you want the vegetables, the food, you want so many things. So what happened is we selected on that. And then, yes, I use papers. I have those floors with this huge space for drawing on chalk. So I started drawing the outlines on chalk, but with the river and the banks and all that. And then I put literally my subjects, they were drawn on paper. So I started shoving the paper here and there to also have it visually most pleasing. That was very important. And anything which touched religion, I tried to put it in the upper bank to show very strong the collection of the river. Because the river, that is the eternity, of course. So you have just above it the sky and everything. So it shows that anything which touches the religious subject as being in the eternity. When you look at the down bank, you actually like bird view, going bird view towards the Ganges, looking more or less above things. But when you are watching the upper bank, you're actually seeing in a way you would see it from the river. And of course, I often they also played artistically, like the Inambara. I turned it around that it spawned this, you know, with the Ganges. Well, actually, it's not the way around. It's away from the Ganga, you know. But I did that. Goswami Bari, which is so hugely important in Serampore. Everyone knows in the past they had a pond in Sadautum. So this time I put their, you know, courtyard literally against the Ganga, and I made the pond connect directly with the Ganga, and putting, of course, the immersion of Ma Durga inside. And I chose this particular family because they had a huge influence on Serampore. If you speak about history of Serampore, you speak about the history of these Goswamis. So this is the way I did it. And also the roads are cross-connected in such a way that sometimes the team is going on from Serampore to Channagar about the roads. And from Chinsura to Bandar, you see Kartik and his chariot moving on literally. Half of the chariot is in Bandle, the other half is in Chuchura. Even the riverbanks are done in such a way that they're perfectly aligned with one another. It's very important the river flows, even the shades of the river, it's getting from deeper blue to lighter blue or lighter blue to deeper blue, that you get a feeling that you're going towards the sea. It is very, very important, and all these ships flowing and all that. So after I had done that with all these papers, cuttings of my subjects on my huge chalk backgrounds, literally, which was extremely amusing, by the way. I felt like a child doing it literally. You know, there's every artist is a child. I'm not so shy to say that. I'm full-fledged child. So I had a huge amusement while doing that. So once that was done, and I was very satisfied about, more or less very satisfied. An artist is never satisfied. We keep changing. Even during the waxing at the last minute, I changed things. An artist is never satisfied. So when I was more or less satisfied to start drawing everything in smaller size, 1 into 3.75 scale, literally with marker pens, I did that. And then again, iron came again in, which already happened when I was busy with the chalk on floor. And again, iron came in. And I waited literally that iron again has a view of that. And again, he put enormously useful inputs, and we again changed and modified some things. We discussed many things together. And then I went for the final big size. And the big size is literally first pencil on cloth. Because the waxing, when you start waxing, you don't want to think and have to look like that, besides your shoulder, and then the wax is drying up literally while you try to check what you have to draw next. So you have to put lightly the pencil on the cloth, literally. And on the pencil on the cloth, you put your wax. Then you just know nothing else done. I copy literally what I put in pencil, which I once again repeat was not at all my case, because again, even during the waxing, there were things coming up and ideas and changes. So even I can't say the pencil fully matches the waxing. There have been changes here and there. And after the waxing is the coloring, and there too I mixed enormously colors. Actually, you generally don't. You have in batik very few colors, but I used my knowledge literally of mixing colors and shades, and I very extensively mixed colors. Very, very extensively. So that is again why you get more of the impression of a painting with white outlines. And especially always maintaining in matters of color, usually important, the blue of the river. I would not settle with the river being less than at least 1/3 of the total surface of the scrolls, no matter how many the subjects go in the background. And ultimately, it's even more than that. I haven't measured it, but it would be more like 2/5 minimum of the scrolls is literally the blue giants. I call those the blue giants. And afterwards, it's Iron's idea to have given it a wonderful name of Riverline. And for me, it's still in my mind is the blue giants, and it's also the way it connects. You have a Portuguese ship entering in 1532, and the other side, that is of course through the Barracourt side, and you have at the other end of the spectrum, you have this ship of Morsin, who went on its travel for 25 years around the world. That's the Indian ship. So there's the beginning and the ending. The ships are showing the time dimension literally. So again, it's about the ships. And of course, the suns. The suns, when you have the setting sun and the rising sun, you can choose at all time. There's no distinction. If you think in terms of the ship going from Barracourt to Bandel, you have the rising sun at Barracourt and the setting sun at Bandel. If you think the opposite, reverse direction of it, no phones, absolutely no phones. So actually, if you think about that's gone. If you think about the opposite direction, which generally I put Indian ships going in, no, absolutely not. That goes out too. So another phone is thrown literally away. If you think in the opposite direction, the Indian ships, Then, of course, you think about the rising sun in Bandel and the setting sun in Bharatpur, which is for me also befitting because you're thinking the rising sun, the start of that glorious period, and the setting sun is the down going of that glorious period. And it matches because if you think it started in Bandel in subground, more or less Chuchura came in second, Chandranaga came in third, Singapore indeed came in fourth, and Bharatpur indeed came in fifth. So it literally follows like a zip chain from the, you can say from the northern, that means the western side of my banners, to the southern, which means the eastern side of my banners. This way, chronologically, it goes up and down in terms of, hold on, I put a pillow on the phone. That's it. Oh, so literally, the chronologically matches from the left side to the right side of my creation, and which is, of course, in the geographical terms, from the north to the south. So for me,
Neline,
yes.
could I just ask you a question, which really sort of follows on from what you've been talking about, a certain, movement or dynamic within your vision. Generally, we consider batik as, when we look as observers at batik, generally the batik is still, it's under glass, or it's maybe there's certain movement to it when it's on a person, of course, a batik clothes. But these banners have been actually conceived as a moving, dynamic artwork. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about the movement and how that, or the way that it was planned to display these batik banners. And if anyone hasn't seen it, there is a link to, on the invitation, there's a link to the banners moving in the wind. And Neline, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about your conception of it as a moving artwork.
First of all, I use a lot of subjects which move. Like, for example, the ox carts, they represent the trade. So they show actually the life of the people who live there. And I used, for example, the ships a lot. The ships indicate movement. I put waves in the river. So I used all kind of motifs which indicate movement. The ships, the waves, the ox carts, the chariots moving, the rods moving. And this is the way I did it. Even when you have the ship with a printing press sailing in and nearly butting into the church of St. Olaf's, the spire, because to show how the religion was very much agreeing with, when in the church, a committee was very much agreeing with education. Even there, out of the ship, you see printed papers flowing out. Like you see all the letters, like the Bengali or etc., to show that they first started the Bengali font. Actually, not fully, because they started in Hooghly first. But you even there, you see these papers flowing out, literally. So I use literally subjects where there is movement. And that was a big challenge in batik, of course, to do things like waves and clouds and these things. And there again, I could literally do it by using this negative technique. When I want to show movement, I give little fine white lines, like for the waves and all that.
What about the left-right movement, Neline? In terms of the way that the flag, the actual sort of flag or banner pole sits on the left-hand side of the banner. I wonder if you'd say a little bit more about that.
Actually, yes. Every banner sits on the left-hand side, and there also I could put smaller icons, because of course what happens, the movement flowing is less on the left side because it's fixed to the pole. So whenever a subject was completely to the left side, I could put it smaller because the subject is fixed. And the more you go towards the right side, then the more I gave the moving themes, because precisely the movement of the silk matches very well with the movement of the theme. So I used more fixed type of elements on the left side, where the flags, the banners move less, and more moving type elements to the right, where precisely it flaps more. I did that. So actually, you actually have the silk moving more, where also the subjects indicate more movement. So it all becomes very, very natural. That was another way that I managed to embed the movement literally into the banners. I hope that replies to your question.
Thank you. Yes. Do you think it's a good time, probably now, to move to the audience questions, Ramanuj?
Absolutely, they must have plenty of them. So I'm full ready. It can be in Bengali too, not a problem. Though I should reply, of course, in English because some among you do not know Bengali. But I'm fully ready. So whichever question, I can also read them for myself in the chat box. Or
Uh,
okay,
thank you. Yes, thank you, Neline. Thank you so much. Thank you, Yen. Personally, I have been a witness to the tremendous work that Neline had done, and I have seen her struggling with colors and with paint boxes and traveling and jostling through the city, Kolkata, the narrow lanes, and then bus, and then coming down. So it's been a wonderfully hectic, and now I see worthy enough trouble that she took. So congratulations, Neline, for that wonderfully elated work of art, and thank you, Yen, for the experience that you had given us. Privileged enough to have worked for you in the project Hooghly River of Cultures. Now we move on to the interactive session, and to conduct the interactive session, I call upon Purva Chatterjee, and she will be hosted by Reshma Khatun. Over to you, Purvadi, with the questions that are already being posted, and Reshma will be there to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Antara. And Neline, those were wonderful. Meeting you virtually after a very long time due to the COVID situation, though we live in the same town. But I wish to go and see them for myself one day. I'll be arriving suddenly at your house. So there are lots of questions here and lots of eulogies too for the wonderful work you have done. The first question is from Bente Wolf. She's saying, Neline, I can't wait to see the banners IRL. They are absolutely wonderful, even on a small laptop screen. Please tell us more on how you choose the symbols to represent each town, strawberries, etc. Shall I repeat the question?
No, it's okay, fine. So actually, for the icons to the left side, as long as it was pre-railway subject, for the icons on the left side, I'm more dependent on what the public knows and immediately thinks about when you're speaking about specific town or settlement. What specific the public immediately comes to mind about that very settlement. And the second thing is about, of course, the symbols. I have done, every art is actually education and a quiz and a research. If you really want to know this part as well, you will need hours to find so many clues. I kept very, very hidden. I used color codes as per the different countries. I used color codes as per different functions. Even I embedded hiddenly digits. Actually, 1853 for the English digits, after you should say Latin digits, and 1260 the Bengali digits, because corresponding here, they are literally hidden everywhere inside the walk. You will get them in orange for Bengali and in green for English. So you literally have to find everywhere where I hid those digits. Even I put the mathematical sign inside, of course, the Bandel, which is actually totally a Shargaon, Bandel, Google and scroll. I even put this mathematical less or equal than. that digit is that symbol is there. It's somewhere inside one cluster of buildings. You know, I often use clusters, like there's a clusters of temples or the cluster of administration, administrative buildings or other clusters per subject, like in Barracourt, there is the clusters of the governor and his wife and their great love stories. So there's a lot of clusters. Now, if one cluster has embedded that mathematical sign, it's not easy to find. Many games have done like that. So it really takes a lot and a lot of time to study those banners and find, oh, it's a bit like a cartoon. You know, after all, I'm Belgian. Don't forget that I'm Belgian, though I lived in Belgium only till 8 years old, but it's in the blood. I'm Belgian. So think of a cartoon with so many hidden symbols and things that you really have to dig out. It's not easy, these banners, to find everything which is hidden inside. Not easy. And of course, the names are very easy. And they are all in the colors of that very specific country, identity colors, who once owned it as a settlement. I've also put the names Fredericks Nagar and Chandra Nagar when it differs completely from present, use. And well, what can I say? If I say too much, I betray too much, isn't it? So there's some limit to what I can say. I'm certainly not going to tell you, for example, where I hit the digits. I'm supposed to find that out. Even inside a ship, the sail of a ship, I've hidden a digit. So I've put them so many places. There are ships which belong to a specific house. I won't say which house. These ships, they fought against pirates and won against pirates. And that family, I won't even say which settlement it is, that family from that time started escort business, that pirates would not attack any ship escorted by their flag. You have to find it out. There is a clue in which way you can guess the ships belong to which house. I won't even say which settlement, which family it is, by the way, particularly, that doesn't matter. It simply was a family. So I've put so many clues and symbols and hidden things inside those banners. It was great fun because I bit mischievous. So I really had a lot of fun, putting all these hidden clues inside, knowing that it will be a very big task to find them. So anything else about symbols?
Yes. There's a question. Bente Wolf has just asked a question, Will you at some stage publish the key to all the questions, all the symbols?
I will. Ultimately, I will. But that is after they will have finally, after the COVID moved around, people have physically seen them. I mean, everything has patience. Like we literally waited 1.5 years before the launch, saying that physically will be much more delayed. We now do it online. I still think that people should have much more seen the banners physically, so than that people will have tried physically, because trying that on a computer screen is not the same as having those gigantic banners in front of your eyes. People should get an opportunity, a real opportunity to search. And for that, I still consider you need to have the real banner in front of your eyes, isn't it so? Not online, that you have to every time expand the view of the screen to find the clues. You need the gigantic banner in front of your eyes, all 5 of them.
Good evening, ma'am. And good evening to everyone. Myself, Shireen, over here. Ma'am, much appreciation for the wonderful work of art which you have showcased to us, which is, in my opinion, a paradigmatic shift from the generic presentation of the batik art which we see in the everyday fabric which we wear. Much appreciation for that, and for the efforts which must have gone into perfecting it. And this thing, in my opinion, needs to be showcased in an international forum, which shall help in development of the art in some other dimension, which I guess is very much needed. And ma'am, right now I come here with my question. Uh, since you have done your work on batik, which is essentially an art form oriented towards the fabric, and Chandanagar at some point of time was an extremely important trading center for traditional fabric, owing to the fact that the artisanal uh, uh, the cottage industry, which uh, which focuses on artisanal weaving, was very much popular in this part, and we traded in fabric woven in the tat, uh, and to to um, to various with various other nations. So if I may put it, that your work is a tribute to the almost obsolete fabric industry of Chandanagar. If I may put it that way, would it be justified? I would like to know your opinion
I
on
have
that.
very specificality in the subject. You will see in the Chandanaga scroll that I have put the weaving in white, because Farshi can mean Farshi Farashi, but it can also mean the Persian word Farshi means also white. I've also added a lot of Persian language in the scrolls. So Farshi can also mean white. So there is a doubt on which of the two origins became Farshi Nagar, Farashi or Farshi. So that's written in Persian. And just the mirror image, border to border, you find in Serampore the same, this time in color. Because not only Chandanagar, but also Serampore was very famous for weaving. So I put them literally border to border. That's the batik. Literally at the border, the two weavings touch one another. You have them colorfully in Serampore and white in Chandanagar, because Chandanagar was very famous for the white weaving. So definitely, I have given tribute to that. I have given absolute tribute to this tradition of weaving of both Chandanagar and Serampore. Definitely, it's one of the major points inside my creation. So you have literally a work on silk, a work on woven cloths, which distribute weaving itself. And the silk is white, the batik weaving, sorry, the silk weaving in Chandanagar, not only silk, but cotton too, was white. So it gives tribute to the material as the same material used to be produced in Chandanagar. Which I remind, due honor to Serampore, just beside border to border, the colorful same thing in Serampore, the weaving. So I give, of course, tribute to both towns. Does that reply to your question?
Yes, ma'am. And another thing I would like to say before concluding, that I'm really thankful to you, ma'am, for the beautiful analogy which you have spun of the east to the west, which beginning from the Portuguese, the advent of the Portuguese, and the ending with the coming of the Britishers. Although topographically, when we see the how the things happen, it
Yes.
it follows the north-south.
Yes,
It
north
follows
south.
the north-south thing, but the pertinent analogy which you have uh, uh, the which you have used as a background to it, that east to west, the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, which actually marks the beginning of the coming of the European East India companies, and the end, and the last one being the British. That is, ma'am, very pertinent, and it has really been very informative for me. Thank you, ma'am.
And not only that, I played on that because actually, in reality, Of course, Vandal is more to the west, and Spiritual is more to the east. So I've actually played on that two directions because the way people read is from left to right. So I've also consistently put the story as from left to right. The way people read a book, we have a habit of going from left to right. So also I went with the balance from left to right in the story, literally, over the years and ages.
Okay, Neline. The second comment is from Thin Night Creole. He's saying wonderful artwork and fascinating discussion. Look forward to learning more in due course. Apologies that I have to leave now. We'll watch the replay for the rest. Best wishes to all. This is from Thin Night Creole. Then Devabrata Das, he's saying wonderful session. Then there's another one from Nandini Saha. She's saying thank you for this wonderful session. Absolutely brilliant. Then there's another one from Srimati Mukherjee on Facebook Live. She's saying magnifique. Neline is a marvel of acculturation. I am astounded by the range and breadth of a vision, a sincere commitment to legacy and artistic expression. She is a visionary artist and craftswoman rolled into one. Great eulogy, Neline. Then there's another one from Anuradha Reddy. She's sending her regards from Intact, Hyderabad. From Facebook. This is from Facebook. Then there's the one from Sucheta Datta. Visual delight. History painted in pictures, flowing like the river itself. Waves depicting the ups and downs. There's another one from Dominic Devoko. Has been showing great interest in the Facebook live stream despite having technical problems. So we must thank him from here. Okay. Then there's another one from Salil Hor. Thank you, Neline, for inviting me. Very interesting and wonderful session. I beg your pardon that I need to do some other work, thus leaving now. Then there's Chandrani Mukherjee. Thank you, Yen and Neline, for this wonderful and very informative session. Absolutely love the discussion. So, lots of praises for you, Neline. Then there's one from Sucheta Datta. Birds, salt, step-by-step process of making.
I think that Purba has a communication connection problem. Yes, it's on standstill. Connection trouble. Yes, he's on standstill.
Yeah, I think there is some kind of a connection problem at Purva's end. I believe we read all the questions, queries, and comments already, and most of them were compliments for the brilliant work that you have done, quite justifiably. You actually deserve more, probably. I can read some of the comments here. Suchita Datta has thank you.
I'm back.
Okay, you are back, so please carry on. If there are any
Sucheta
more,
Datta.
yeah.
The question I was asking, there's some problem with my connection today. Sucheta Datta puts a question to Neline. Birds, salts, step-by-step process of making cottage cheese, escort service, etc. were depicted. Tell us more about it. Is there any depiction of the mix of communities living in these regions? This art form is a great tool for arousing curiosity among the children and adults in learning history by asking questions and solving puzzles.
Exactly.
So
I had the children a lot in mind when I did all these things with puzzles, because the children love that. They love to play. If you tell a child to find clues and solve puzzles, they greatly love it and they get more interest in it. And of course, they learn better playfully in the process. And yes, exactly so. The mixture of community is extremely important, hugely important. Like, for example, when you are making the cottage cheese, as taught literally by the Portuguese, which later originated to the Bengalis starting to make sweets. This is absolutely so. This is a community engagement, community to community. Also, when Mohsin sails out with his ship for 25 years all over the world, it's again about community with community. The Imambara he creates, where you have the symbols of 7 religions on the Imambara in their sacred colors, is again a matter of community to community interaction. Then we have, of course, this time again about international community, where you sat down, where I showed so many fruits which are important, introduced by the Portuguese into India, often via South Portugal from South America and rivers. The same thing for the Dutch, the vegetables introduced, the same thing William Carey's garden, all the flowers. Of course, his botanical garden was huge. I could not represent everything. So I gave a few of the flowers, I gave a few of the fruits. And so this is all also this type of import of fruits and all that. And this is also an exchange, it's community to community. Even the Oscars, precisely it's that, because the Oscars, they are showing the trade from the local inhabitants with their Oscars going to their ships to trade with the Europeans. So also trade is a community to community, international interaction in every way. When I show the ship, the printing press ship coming in and sailing in with the sheets flowing out of the ship, literally, it's the education, the novel style of education coming in. It's again a community to community, international community. It went through Christianity, but it was never about Christianity. The church and helped in many ways. The Danish financed it. It was, of course, it was through the Christianity, but it was never about Christianity. It was about education. So I'm showing all these things. That is exactly a hugely important interface. Is about the connection between communities, between religious communities, even religious development, where you see a pilgrim, Raghunath Das, going to walk away to Puri, about nationalities intermixing. You must not forget that actually each settlement, except we could say that Singapore was really Danish before it was British, and that's it. But you could say Chuchura, Bandel. Bandel, we could say, okay, mainly Portuguese, but still at Hooghly, there was this Dutch fort, and especially Chuchura, and with Armenians also, of course, and Chananaga, those two were very multinational and multilingual. So also I try to show that by showing elements of each community. Like, for example, Mohsin College, that time called New Hooghly College, I put it in Persian blue, because due to Mohsin, who was a second generation Persian. The church at Chuchura, I put in the three colors of the Princeton flag. So I show it this way too, through colors of buildings. In many ways, I show the origins of the building. I may be in one settlement, but the person belongs to a different origin. So this way also, there are so many ways I show the brassage. The colors are very important. To read the colors is quite complex, and they indicate a lot about the mixing of populations and nationalities and communities, and even in food, like for example, chuchora, you have this ox carp coming in, and it's noted in Bengali as posto, because the frying of opium seeds started in chuchora. So the famous Bengali dish of posto is all thanks to this Dutch chuchora. So I show everything, all this is hugely important. It's hugely important. After all, every story is first a story of human to human contact. Otherwise, it's dead. His stories about human beings, the normal human beings. Not, I didn't show anything much of, big kings and all these things. Of course, there is Dupleix in Shanagora because it was too iconic, and he was once upon the time the governor, and if he had not been literally in France, sabotaged by his old countrymen, the history of India could have turned a bit different with much more French influence. Of course, there is William Carey, who is, for me, a king in the sense of a king, a mental king. Of course, he was from very humble origins, but to me, he was the greatest of men, much more than any king at that time. So I show a very few stalwart people. There is this Armenian who was the son of a prince and ultimately spent his whole life in India and did huge work in India. So yes, I a little bit show some very stalwart people, but generally it's about the very normal people with their ox carts and their sheep, the trade, and some pilgrims, and this type of the very general normal people, the weavers in their art, the people who are making the cheese, the people who are growing all these vegetables and fruits and these things. It's about the general people. That's very, very important. Very, very, very important.
So here's another one from Sucheta Datta again, Neline, for you. Thank you for this wonderful session. I have seen batik incredible work on fabrics in Shantiniketan, but this is equally fascinating. Hope to learn more about this in due course and hope to see you someday. This is from Sucheta Datta again. Then there's Sulagna Chakravarti. She is saying wonderful session. Thank you. And there's another one from Pritam Bagchi. Feeling cherished seeing you after such a long time. This session is a delightful one. Thanking Ian for informing me personally. So, lots of eulogies for you. Thank you, Neline. No more questions for you today. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we have come to the end of today's event, and I would like to thank everyone from Intech Hooghly chapter, especially everyone who were present today and everyone who have interacted by posting comments, everyone who were watching, whether our Facebook Live or whether you were watching this event here in the Google Meet. We would like to thank you all for making your time to share with us what we are actually thinking about reimagining our life at a time when the railways were not here. And I would also like to thank Dr. Ian Magedera and Neline Mondal, especially Neline Mondal. She has every kind of high compliment. That is what you deserve. I have seen you working on these banners. I have traveled. I have taken photographs. Do you remember when you were working on them? I have seen splashes of colors all over on your hand, and those days were full of conjecture. What are you going to do? These are big pieces of silk. So I am really amazed to see the final product, and I really look forward to the installations when these banners will be really installed in the public squares in full view, and the banners will be flattering. The banners will be fluttering in the wind, and everyone will be as amazed as we are day. So we really look forward to a better day after this pandemic is over, and with that hope, may I call this a day. We conclude here. Please follow our Facebook page, Intech Hooghly chapter, to know about uh, uh, our future activities. Mostly we are going online these days, so everything is recorded there. And thank you again, everyone, for being here. And when we really install all these things, you will also receive updates from our Facebook page, and you will again receive the video clips and the photographs of those installations. Thank you all.
One word by me, that's in the last phases of waxing and coloring, because it's so huge, it cannot be done by two hands. So in the very last stages of waxing and coloring, I also had assistance of a young artist by the name of Mondal. So technically also has good hands. And under my instruction, did everything, also helped in every way. That is, after all, it was important for me to mention. And that is only fair and honest to mention that. I every time sent everything to Ian, wherever he participated, also his picture, his video, everything is in it. Everything is fair and honest in this matter. To say that the last two phases, executive phases, I took assistance. Because we're really pushing against time. And ultimately, we finished in time, but due to COVID, we had to do everything.
Right. Thank you so much. And thank you, Purba Chatterjee, for moderating the interactive session. And thank you, Reshma, for assisting Purba in moderating, actually accumulating the queries and the comments. And Ian has mentioned that Debanjan has beautifully designed the posters for this event, and uh, we look forward really towards the actual installation. Neline has not divulged many things today, and that's why we really look forward to the actual installation. Thank you all.